Hi, everybody, and welcome to another fantastic presentation for the Hypnosis Master Summit. I'm very, very honored and excited to have with us now Andy Hahn, or Andrew Hahn, who is a licensed clinical psychologist. He's the founder of Life-Centered Therapy Training Institute, and he has actually been previously training as a director in a clinic and a professor into graduate programs in counseling psychology. He's been doing a lot of work over 30 years in the field of helping people. And he actually, among so many other qualifications, he is an international teacher of the Enneagram. Since the late 1990s, he's trained about 1,000 people in life-centered therapy. And today, Andrew Hahn will talk to us about healing trauma without retraumatizing. So Andrew, thank you so much for saying yes to our invitation and for being here with us today.
It's my pleasure, Eugene. Thank you for inviting me. I feel very honored, and I'm so looking forward to this.
Woo! Tell me about it. So, tell me first, please, Andy. Can I say Andy or Andrew? Which one is best for you?
Andy is great.
Andy is great. So, what is life-centered therapy in your own words?
Life-centered therapy starts with a basic premise, which is that life is a living being that's evolving, and that each of us is like if we take a mystical concept, each of us is like a cell in the body of life itself. And we're sort of like a traumatized on one level cell in the body of life. So we could say we are to life sort of like our dense energy is to us. And just as we're trying to evolve and become self-aware union with life, so that we be self-aware union with life, our experience is that every time something can't be handled in our collective of our soul, there's a being that is doing the same thing, that its intention is to remember who it is, become healed and become whole and become integrated, and then be part of the community that is the evolution of our soul, in the same way that we are part of the community that is the evolution of life itself, and that is our work in life, is to become in alignment with life, and then to know what that means in a very visceral way, and then to touch into our particular desire when we're really quickened and alive, and to live that out in service to life, whatever that means. That's why we call it now life-centered therapy, as opposed to guided self-healing, which is what it was called until about 3 years ago. And our lay trainings are still called guided self-healing, but our trainings for professionals we call life-centered therapy. And the basic idea of life-centered therapy is that people only come to healing for one reason, only one reason, which is that something couldn't be handled and integrated. That's it. That's our definition of trauma. So it's not something that is necessarily too bad. It could be something that's too good. It could be something that's too much. As long as it can't be handled, then we'd say that's why someone's coming to therapy. It may come out as aversion or craving or whatever. And that what we're inviting people into is freedom. So that when you really can say, I can say yes to everything, including the changes which to happen, there'll be no more anxiety. There'll be no more judgmentalism. There'll be no more comparison. There'll be no more need to understand. You'll just be able to be with whatever is, with non-attachment and with open-heartedness and open-mindedness. So just to be very quick, why do people come for healing? Something can't be handled. That's it. And I don't care if you call it chronic back pain that no one can understand, or anxiety or depression or bad relationships. I think it's all the same thing. If you're suffering, I just think it's something that couldn't be handled and integrated. What is therapy? Simply mastering what can't be handled and integrated. And the basic lost idea here is when something can't be handled, in that moment, a discomfort is born, literally, and it's a living being. It's not a part of you anymore then you're a part of me, where it's like it's a part of the universe of life, and it has its own, it's not a part of you, it has its own identity. It was born in a moment, it has its own identity, it has its own history, it has its own everything. So it's not a part of you, and it's here right now. And so the invitation is, if you can choose to become aware and allow, bring all your attention to and accept that sensation, that discomfort, and become it from the inside out, you now are going to align with the chooser who's witnessing and holding whoever that is, as opposed to identifying with whoever that is, which is what happens when there's a trauma. You lose all perspective and you become that sensation without realizing it. And so all I'm going to invite you to do in simple form is choose to become the sensation and let it share its story in the here and now. That's why I say there's no such thing as regression, and you can't be re-traumatized if you have any witness function whatsoever, because you're not experiencing it. You're just choosing to be with someone, and then you may live out their story, or like you're a character in the play. So it's like you're an actor who's chosen to be that character, but you're not that character, even when you're fully enrolled, or you're watching a movie or you're reading a novel, but you're not it. So I'm not working, it's not client-centered in that way. It's sensation-centered, as sensation is revealing something about dense energy that's moved from energy to matter because of trauma. And all we're doing is bringing it back into its pure form, at which point one of two things happens. Either your symptoms go away, or your relationship to them changes so much that you just say, it's a good day to die. So
how it's like somebody comes to you with a whatever issue, and you tell them, well, you have to accept it, right? How, well, I don't want to accept that. I don't want to accept this trauma in my life. How do you come to terms with that?
I don't ask them to accept it. What I do is I ask them to.
That was my interpretation.
I would never ask them to accept it. What I'd say is, there is a trauma in your life. You're coming in here because you're anxious, or you're depressed, or you have chronic fatigue syndrome. So it's there whether you accept it or not. So the question then is, how are you going to be in relationship with it? And what I'd say is, if you can choose to be whoever it is that's having that symptom and say, I'm here with you, you're not accepting the symptom, you're accepting the person or the being who's having the symptom. I'll tell you what I mean. Suppose you're in my office, right? And a motorcycle backfires and you have a panic attack and you're splayed out on my floor, right? Well, you may not want to accept the fact that you're splayed out on my floor, but you're splayed out on my floor anyway. Now, let's suppose I say to you, all right, Eugen, what's happening right now in the body? If I was going to make this simple, as you're doing that, and you say, my chest is pounding. All right, then I'd say, Eugen, you're not having a panic attack. Someone whose name is chest is pounding is having a panic attack. You're fine, your little toe is fine, you're not having a panic attack. There's no reason to, you just heard a motorcycle backfire, right? So there's no reason for you to have a panic attack in 2021. But someone is, and their name is chest is pounding. All you're gonna do is, you've been identified with chest is pounding, you've lost all your perspective. You're gonna bring all your attention there and say, I'm gonna find out what your story is. And you go there and you say, oh my God, bombs are going off. And I can't handle this. And I'm watching all that happen. Or you'll see it, right? Or you'll know it, because I don't think the divine life cares whether you're auditory, kinesthetic, or visual. And as soon as you do that, you say, I'm going to be with and accept that person who couldn't handle the bombs going off. And as soon as you do that, you're now the witness who's holding that person and saying, I'm here with you. And as soon as they share their story, they go back into their pure form, which is energy. They go from 1 to the speed of light squared. The sensation goes away. And suddenly when the motorcycle backfires, you're no longer in the war. You're saying, oh, I remember this thing that happened, but it's not who I am. So I would say, I never ask people to accept their trauma. I ask them to accept the person who's experiencing the trauma and be with them, but not identified with them. Does that clarify it?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So when you say, and this, this raises another question, because if you say, accept that person or that part, which is, experiencing the trauma, that would.
I wouldn't call them a part, by the way.
What would you call them? That's what I was going for. That's what I wanted to clarify. So you would say it's a different person.
Yes.
It's like, so it's me. I'm having a panic attack. I feel it in my body, and then you come in and say, well, it's actually not you, but it's the pounding in the chest sensation, which is
pounding in chest. That's its name. It's not pound. It's not like Eugen sensation. Its proper name is pounding in chest, just like your proper name is Eugen. And if I want to work with a part in an internal family systems or voice dialogue way, I can do that. I want you to know that virtually never gets called for because I use muscle testing. But if it does, then I would say, in fact, a part of you is having an experience, or an organ system is angry at you. Maybe you were smoking and your lungs are angry at you. So then I'd be talking to your lungs, not to you. But most of the time, it's a younger you, or you from 2,000 years ago, or you from a parallel life, or one of your blood ancestors or somebody else. And you're just carrying that as you are. It's like the spotlight's on you, but you're no more the center of attention than, like, it's life-centric, it's not ego-centric. I would say, like, you know, these things aren't part of you. You're all part of a soul group that is the sun, you could say, and you're revolving around it, and so is pain in chest. And pain in chest or heart pounding could be 3-year-old Eugen. It could be Eugen, who is a general in Rome, who is in 2000 BC. It could be Eugen's great-great-grandmother and his father's side. So it's not a part of Eugen. So I'm asking you to find the person who actually was traumatized, that you could say is part of a collective of which you are also a part right in this moment.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay. Wonderful. All right. So all right, let's dig deeper into this, like, because this is completely new for many people who are into hypnosis, into regression, and regression to cause, like, the mother of all therapies and all that stuff, which I'm not saying it's true or false. I'm just saying that some people, it's the only way they found, or, what I've noticed in the world of therapy, many people fall in love with the technique rather than with the, I don't know how to say it, the results. It's like I'm much more interested in using a technique and only using that technique, and that's like the holy grail of techniques, rather than actually wanting to help a person. So how is your approach
I am a
different?
hypnotist, so I can speak to both, and I can tell you why I found this to be more effective. I have great respect for hypnosis, obviously, or I wouldn't be sitting and talking to you. But I don't think there is such a thing as regression, because whoever that is here right now. So why would I have to regress you? That's ridiculous. You're not my client. Pounding in chest is here right now, right? So you're choosing to become pounding in chest, which is way more, in my sense, simple and powerful than regressing you back to something, right? And then talking to you. I don't want to talk to you because you're not the person who has the problem. Pounding in chest has the problem. They're here right now. So I would say everything is happening right now. So there's no such thing as regression. And all I have to have you do is become the sensation, and you will become whoever it is. And it could be somebody from your future. It could be someone from a future life. So then I wouldn't regress you, I'd progress you, obviously, except for or it could be someone from a parallel life. It could be anybody. So but it's all happening in the here and now. So there is no regression, because I'm not going to relax you and bring you someplace. I'm going to just say, whoever has the problem is here right now. All you have to do is say, I'll be with you, whoever you are, just like I'm talking to you right now. It's the same thing. You'll be becoming the sensation and letting it share its story. I don't regress you because you're not the client. That'd be like if something was wrong with me and I said, Eugen, what's going on with me? And Andy said, well, why are you talking to Eugen? I'm sitting right here. Why would I talk to you? Why would I bring you someplace to try to find me? I'm here right now.
And how do you help clients to make this, I don't know, differentiation or separation, if you will, between me, Eugene, and the pounding in chest?
It's simple. I just say to Eugene, let's take, I took that example, right? I'd say, Eugene, when you're having this panic attack, scan your body, tell me what you're noticing. You'll tell me something. You'll say, I'm feeling pounding in chest, or you'll say, I feel a headache, or you'll say, I feel sick to my stomach. You're going to say something, or you'll say, I'm feeling nothing. At which point I say, because people say, what happens if people can't get into body sensation? I say, well, tell me about it. They say, what happens? They say to me, they say, I feel nothing. And I say, ask them, since they're answering your question, you say, what are you feeling in the body? They say, I'm feeling nothing. They're literally answering your question. You can't step outside the process. I say, where in your body are you feeling? I'm feeling nothing. And I've never yet had a person who couldn't answer that question. So they'll say, I'm feeling nothing. I think it's in my head, or I think it's in my knee, or I think it's in my gut, or I think it's in my chest. So I say, all right, all you're going to do is bring all your awareness and become, I'm feeling nothing in chest. And then they're going to tell me a story about someone who's saying, you know, I'm feeling so sad right now that it's just like, it's too much for me. I'm just dead inside. And I'll say, and then they'll tell me the story. So it's
And
like,
that who is now telling the story, it's not the same as the client who enters the door.
of course not. The client who enters the door is a reporter. That's all they are. I'm not interested in talking to the client who enters the door, really. I mean, I will if I use muscle testing and says I'm to talk with them. But mostly what I'm going to say is my job is to know a framework and to know a protocol and to know life as best I can. Your job is you're going to become a sensation and you're going to share their story. That's all you're going to do. It's not your story, it's their story. If you need to, I can find out more information about them. I can find out if it's something that started in Eugen's lifetime. I can find out if it's from a karmic past life, if you believe in past lives. And if you don't, I'll find a way to talk to you about it, like personal mythology or undreamed dreams or the imaginal or whatever you like. Or it may be one of Eugen's ancestors or a whole group of them who are on a forced march. And we will find out where this crystallized. Because of course you want to go to where it crystallized holographically, because that's, as you say, root cause, but it's just those beings are here right now. I'm not regressing Eugen. I'm just saying they're here right now. Go find them. They're waiting to be found. And all you have to do is find the body sensation. And then anything that you share after that is certainly not Eugen anymore. It's whoever the body sensation is.
Doesn't this kind of encourage the idea, you know, some people believe strongly in this, others not so much. But doesn't this encourage a little bit this idea of entities, energies, and, you know, stuff like that?
Sure, but who are we to say? I mean, like, I open to everything. So I'll tell you an interesting story about entities and energies if you like.
Sure.
Okay. You want my weirdest story or you want just an entity story?
Of course. No.
You want the weirdest one?
Average is too boring, right?
All right, I don't want to bore you. Okay. I'll give you two really weird stories about energies. Okay. The first one was I saw a woman. She was classically what's called dissociative identity disorder with psychotic features, okay? And she'd been hospitalized at least 2 times every year before I saw her. And I saw her, and using my diagnostic system, I thought she had a horrendous history. I mean, like violence like you would not believe, violence more than anyone I'd ever seen. I mean, like it included rape, incest, watching a parent murder a sibling. It was horrendous. My system said it's none of those things are the root cause of that. It says that an energy took you over when you were between 5 and 10 years old. Now, I was a little anxious because I was doing this just when I was starting this. This is almost 30 years ago now. And I said, does that make sense to you? And she blanched and she said, I know exactly what you're talking about. When I was she was Southern Baptist in our little world. She was from the South, and she was in a fire and brimstone service that was her father, who was involved in some of this trauma, was giving this service. And she said, when I was in that service, I felt this really dark energy take me over. Now, no one could see it. She was already in therapy with a psychiatrist because of what was going on, and they had the resources and no one was talking about what was going on. So she told the psychiatrist that, this is her report, that this dark energy took her older. Her report was, she told him that she was crazy and put her on Thorazine, at which point she vowed she would never tell anybody this story again. Fast forward 30 years, I do my diagnostic and I said, does that make sense to you? That a dark energy took you over sometime between ages 5 and 10 in your lifetime? And she said, I know exactly what you're talking about. And she told me what happened. And I said, all right, what we're going to do is that little you is here being taken over by that dark energy. And what we can do is we're going to find her through a body sensation, but we're going to talk with her, not the dark energy, who's being taken over, at which point she goes back in and she starts to tell the story. Not only does she tell the story like it's happening right now, but I found out with my diagnostic that she knew how to transform it, which made her think I was crazy. But anyway, she said she knew it. And so she's being taken over by this energy, and she looks up at me and she says, I'm supposed to do this dance. Now, this is the one session I wish I had videotaped. She's 1/16 Native American, and she's just getting interested in this stuff, but knows nothing about Native American dances. And she starts to do the most extraordinary dance in my office. And you can tell it's Native American. She's dancing like in these spirals to a beat that clearly is a Native American beat, and she looks up at me about a minute into it and says, like, what am I doing? Because she's being danced. And about a minute later, you can feel the room shake. And she says, I think I'm done. And you know how many times that woman was hospitalized after that? 0. And the way I know that is I saw her for a few months and then we moved apart. I saw her 25 years later in a doctor's office. And she came up to me and I said, I won't say her name. She lets me use her name, and we're writing a book. She lets me use her real name. But I said, how are you? And she said, I'm really well. I've never been hospitalized again. I've never had bugs crawling on me. I've never been not able to account for time since that moment. That's my first weird story. I'll tell you my second weird story since you like weird stories. I had a colleague who is a very, very down-to-earth therapist, even though sort of an edgy therapist. And she came into me and she said, Andy, you have to help me out. She's totally heterosexual and she is at the time about 60, okay? And she says, I have these voices in my head that are driving me crazy, and they're saying things they're saying very, very lascivious things. We're near a school, middle school and a high school. And she says, I'm looking out the window at these prepubescent girls, and this voice is saying really like horrifically lascivious things about what I'm supposed to do to them. And it's taking me everything I can do not to go out and like do something. And she said, you have to help me. And I said, well, when did this start? She said, well, it started about a month ago, but nothing happened a month ago. I went to my mother's house, but that can't account for this. And I said, well, we'll find out. So we do our diagnostic and it says it does start a month ago. And it also said that an energy, I differentiate entities and what we call superimpositions. Entities are more like animal-like beings that don't shapeshift, whereas superimpositions are energies that are very powerful that take you over. And it said she'd been taken over by a superimposition. And it said that it in fact did happen. This wasn't a bleed through from another lifetime or when she was young. Something did happen. It crystallized a month ago. So we found the sensation that was associated with her being taken over a month ago. And then she vividly knew what had happened. I will tell you what happened because I think everyone in the world should know this. Her lover was a policeman who was on the vice squad, and they were staking out a pedophile, and the pedophile and her lover got into a fight, and that night she and her lover had intercourse, and she said, this is really weird. I can feel this energy going off of him like he's a carrier into me. And she said, this has been happening ever since. And I said, well, we can take care of that because there's a practice you can do for energies that take you over, which is typically vibrational. In this case, it was light. And we did a light practice and it all went away. The sensation went away and all of the voices went away and everything. And she said, I now have a sense of why there are a lot of people who are in jail for pedophilia. Because I want you to know, I have a really strong ego and I want you to know, and I'm a heterosexual woman, and it was everything I could do not to go after these men, these young girls. And she said, I can only imagine what's going on there. Now, I'm not going to tell you that all dissociative identity disorder with psychotic features is dark energies that have taken people over. And I'm not going to tell you that all pedophilia isn't that either, but I've seen it on more than one occasion now. And so, yeah, I believe anything. If you can imagine it, it may be what's going on. And I think nothing is crazy. I just think there are stories that we haven't discovered yet. And if we open to entities, I can tell you another woman who had a terrible case of asthma and she went on very heavy duty medication that wasn't going to take care of her for a month. And she came in and it turned out it was entities that had entered her field. She thought she was down a basement and there was like, mold there. And I muscle tested if it was physical trauma. It said no. And then it said it was entities. And she could feel all these weird creatures in her field. And we took care of them. And her asthma went away in a moment. And the medication wouldn't have accounted for that for at least a month. So she totally believes it was these energies, even though she doesn't necessarily believe in those energies. She doesn't care because her asthma went away. And that's what I say to most people. I'll say, it won't matter if you think this is literally true or not. Because if you have these incredible compulsions and they go away, will you care if there's really a dark energy that took you over that was pedophilic? Or will you care if there was really these energies that were down in your basement that actually got into your field and changed you? No, she was very happy because her asthma symptoms went away, and this other person because their pedophilia cravings went away, and the woman who was seeing me because she wasn't hospitalized again. And they will all say to you, I don't know if it's real or not, but I do know that it had an enormous useful result. And to be perfectly honest, if people say, is it real? I say, that's for you to decide. It's not, that's a philosophical question. All I care is it useful? So I do believe.
Yeah, absolutely.
I believe in everything.
Absolutely. And I'm right there with you. And I was like, it doesn't matter, what label you put on it. It doesn't matter, how many steps it has. It doesn't matter anything. It matters if you can get the solution, if you can get it done, if you can get the job done, so to speak. Yeah. So let me ask you, why do people come for healing? And, what is the relationship of this to trauma and suffering?
Trauma, simply, I think suffering and trauma are the same thing. It's just something that can't be handled. Why people come to healing is to master it. How you master it is you become the sensation, and then you're the witness host as opposed to identifying with it. And then all I have to do is find three things. I have to find out if the symptom you come in with is really the problem or part of a deeper problem, and it's just a symptom, so we can't work on it directly. I give you another example, if you like, but the first thing I have to find out is what your real intention is. So suppose someone else comes in and they have the same reaction, a motorcycle backfires and they have a panic attack. But this time I find out that that's not the problem and we can't even work on it directly because it's a symptom of something else. I do my diagnosis and I find out that it is a betrayal story, okay?
Yes.
So I have them this time, instead of just dropping into the panic attack around the bomb going off, which is really the motorcycle, I have them focus on what happens in betrayal. All right, let's suppose now the sensation isn't just pounding heart, it's that they have a throat tightening and they have a really bad pain in their foot. So I say, okay, those are all the same being, and let's say it happened at the same time, but this time they're going to tell me a different story. Instead of being a soldier, they were a leader of soldiers, okay? And they're not paying enough attention, and they walk them into an ambush, and they're there trying to scream out to get to stop, but the men are already too far, and he watches them all get blown to pieces or injured and everything. And he's feeling incredibly guilty because he's walked them in because he hasn't, paid enough attention. So he comes in and he says, he's having his panic attack, but I find out that's not the problem. He also has ADHD, right? With guilt associated with it, that's unconscious guilt. He has OCD and this terrible, quote unquote, irrational fear that if he makes any mistakes whatsoever, something horrific will happen. He shoots himself in the foot. Let's say shrapnel in his story hits him in the foot, right? So he comes in with chronic foot pain that he will tell me about because of something else. I mean, especially if this happened from another lifetime. Or let's suppose he's saying to himself very strongly then, I never want to be a leader again. So he imagines shooting himself in the foot or both. So whenever leadership opportunities come up again, let's say he's repressed the whole thing, so he doesn't know why this is happening. He shoots himself in the foot, so he'll never be a leader again. Let's say he has really strange reactions because he repressed this to something that looks like, when he walks out into the desert, but he doesn't know why. He comes in with all those symptoms, right? Plus he feels like God's abandoned him and whatever else you like. So he comes in with these 6 symptoms. All right, I'm in graduate school, I'm going to kill myself. I'm not literally, but you have all these things. But if it's all enfolded into that story within 20 minutes, if that's the only reason, his OCD goes away, his ADHD goes away, his chronic foot pain goes away, his fear of sounds, his panic reactions to sound goes away, and he's willing to take on leadership roles if I can figure out a way to handle that story and to get him to have a forgiveness practice with the men that he thinks he's killed and is responsible for, right? So that's why I say I'm looking for the real intention, not the symptom. And I'll muscle test and say, if you come in and you say, I want to work on something, I'll say, is that the real intention or is there something else? And if there is something else, can you find it or do I find it with a diagnostic? And if I find it with a diagnostic, I sort of have spent my life studying myth and I sort of look into every possible thing it could be where someone could get stuck, right? So that's the first thing I do. Second thing I do is I'm going to find out where it crystallized, because everything else is going to be an echo. It's not going to be as powerful to work with a guy in my office who's having reactions to sound as the soldier 10 years ago who's having bombs going off. And the third thing I have to find out is, do they need anything other than sharing their story? And if they do, it might be something that they know, like that woman who did the dance, or it might be anything from emotional freedom technique or some kind of EMDR or a spiritual practice or going through a death process because they dissociated another lifetime during a death. So they're living out the death, and we'll find out what they need. And that's what I do, essentially.
Got it. Got it. Now, you mentioned a couple of times your, I don't know, how do you call it? Assessment process, intake process or something. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Sure. When you come in, I'm going to do a centering practice with you. I'm going to have you breathe and just see what's here. Anything you want to share that feels like you know it's important and what you would really desire if you could get exactly what you intended, even if you weren't sure was possible. I'm going to write it down literally because everything you say is going to be literal, right? I'm going to write down a list of everything you say. Then I'm going to start muscle testing. I'm going to start using kinesiology. I'm going to say, if we're going to do trauma work, because I do other things other than trauma work, but let's keep it simple and it's going to be some kind of trauma work, which just means there's something that couldn't be handled. All right, you'll have your list of intentions that are blocked in some way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll say, do you have a highest intention, and is it any, some, or all of the intentions you have on your list of intentions? And either I'll get a yes or a no. If it says yes, and you have 7 things you've said, I'll say, is it one of them made up of one of them? Is it one of them made up of more than one of them? Or is it all of them? And then I'll say, I'll find that out, and I'll say, do you find out which one it is, or do I find it? If it says you find it, it says you know what is the most important thing. If it says you don't know, it says it's something you said, but I can't ask you because it says whatever you think you're getting through muscle testing, which I think is soul, says you don't know which one it is. So then I'll muscle test the list. Now I know why you're here. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure every part has permission, and I'm going to see if we need any more clues about the actual story. Like is it a theme? Also, it may say you need another clue. That's the beginning part. I find out why you're here. All parts give permission, and you need another thematic clue. And it'll say yes or no. The next thing I do, which is the third step, right, is I find out, are we to find anything, information about where it crystallizes? If it says yes, and it says I'm to do that through kinesiology, I'll say, does it originate what we call Eugen's lifetime? If it says yes, I'll say, should we find out more, like how old he was, or who, what, when, where, why, how, or if he knows the story. Let's say it doesn't start in Eugen's lifetime. Then I have to have a talk with Eugen, and I'm going to say, let's say it says it's a past life. I say, Eugen, if I say the word past life, are you going to run screaming out of the room, or are you okay with it? If you say you're okay with it, I'll say, okay, it started in a past life, and soul comes through 2 ways. It comes through energy or blood, right? But blood is soul, not literal. It's not like you're holding it in the blood, but I can find out, is it something genealogical and you're living out your great-great-grandfather's story on your mother's side, and it's come down through the generations and been affecting everybody? Or is it karmic, at which point you won't be your bloodline, but you could be anything, including not you. And if it says I'm to find that, I can find out even what you are. I mean, I can find out anything about who, what, when, where, why, how, or if you know the story. And less is typically more. So I'll find out where it originates, and I'll get you just enough information. So if it never occurred to you that it may have happened to your great-great-grandfather on your mother's side, then I have to find that for you, because you won't, in the imaginal, open to that possibility. If it says it happens, in a karmic past life, if you're open to that, that's great. If you're not, or you say, or you're sure you know what it is and it's wrong, they may say something like, don't work on their certainty that they know what it is and it's wrong. Give them the information. I'll find out this story crystallized, in Italy 2,000 years ago. So you get as much clues as you need. And then I find out if the person needs anything other than just sharing their story. And just sharing their story is the most powerful thing, because if you're the witness and you're aligning with the dense energy, by definition, if you just sit there with it without judgment and say, I'm just here with you, it will go back into its pure form. It will move from matter back into energy. And you'll know right away something's different in the session because pounding heart won't be there anymore. Or you'll say, this is really weird. Closing throat isn't there anymore. Or terrible pain in neck isn't there anymore. It's just gone because it's gone. Yeah. And that's what I do. That's what a session, that's what the diagnostic looks like. And then the session is, you're going to become a sensation. You're going to find the sensation. You're going to bring all your awareness to it, become it from the inside out. And whatever you share at that point is its story, no matter what it is. If you say, I can't see anything, I say, that's right. You can't see anything. And you say, no, I can't see anything. And I say, that's right. And you think you're saying you can't do the process in 2021, but you're in a story where you can't see anything because I'm going to just poke out your eyes. And you're screaming at them bloody murder. And I just sit there and say, that's right, and. Until, they want to kill me, at which point they'll say, no, you're making me crazy. I want, stop doing this to me. And I'll say, yeah, that's right, and then they find the story, and then they change the story, and then there's symptoms.
Nice. So can you do this on your own, or do you need to be guided by someone in the process?
You can do it on your own. You can do it on your own, totally. I mean, we train people, and some people, the only reason they do the training is so they can do it on their own. That's why we call it guided self-healing, because you're guided by a deeper aspect of self and you become whole. And we've had people trained, but you can do it on your own yourself. All I'd say is, anytime you're suffering about something, if you want to do it in its simple form, all you have to do is find a sensation, choose to bring your awareness there and become it. And then just share whatever comes to you. That is the simple version of what we just did. We're writing a book and our editor who knew nothing about this stuff, started doing it. Or, and she said, I'm getting results. Like, she thought she was just type A personality and she'd been anxious her whole life. And you can read about what she says. She actually wasn't anxious her whole life. She was anxious. She said, every time I wanted to do my own work, I would be able to, when I had to do work for other people, I could do it. But whenever I wanted to be creative, I couldn't. And she said, I've been anxious about this my whole life. And she said, I'm going to try this process. She drops in, she gets a terrible headache. She's never done it. I'd never done a session with her. She becomes headache. And then she says, oh my God, I'm in first grade. And she can see herself vividly with her pigtails and this little dress. And she's writing. And her teacher, who she calls, I don't remember what she calls her name, but it's not happy making. This teacher is coming over her. She's not paying attention and slams 2 books on her head and said, I said, get out your math work. And she said, ever since then, I hadn't realized that whenever I want to be creative and do my own work, I get really anxious. And it all went away in 1 second. And she could finish writing a book she was writing that she was having terrible trouble with. So of course you can do it on your own. And anytime you have a sensation, let's say you have a headache, instead of taking a pill, you could say, okay, headache, you teach us. What have you come to share? And if you want to, where are you beginning and what's happening? And just be headache. And one of 3 things will happen. You'll either become someone who's having a headache, or an image will come to you like, happened to her, or just knowings like you're reading a novel. And as soon as you do that, if all you did was that, in my experience, you will get unbelievably good results. Everything after that is jazz riffs. It becomes, I can nuance it a lot, but anybody can do it on their own. And we teach you the protocol. I can teach you the protocol in 1 day, and then you can do it on your own, a simple version.
Nice. And is this a method or technique that can be done with groups as well?
Oh yeah, it's wonderful. I run groups. And what happens is it's sort of like the group becomes like a living being, each of whom is sort of a part of a collective that's the soul of that group. And then what I do is I have each of them check in, and then amazing stuff happens because I start muscle testing what the best, it's like I muscle test the soul of that group, whether it's a group like a group therapy group or organization or whatever, because they have a body also, obviously, right? So
like the egregore of the group, basically.
Exactly. And then it will either say, find the theme that's common to the group, or it will say work one person at a time, and then the next person knows what that person needs, or the possibilities are unlimited, and my job is to sort of tune in and to find out what the best way to proceed is if I have 7 people in a group. And that's, yes, you can do it in a group, you can do it in a collective, you can do it any place.
Awesome. Now, you know, is there any limit to where you can use this method? Like, is there something that you'd say, this method won't work with this issue, but it works with the others? But are there any limitations to it?
I haven't found one yet, but there's always tomorrow. I'm working with someone who's DID and psychotic. I work with people who have chronic, horrendous pain that nothing is touching. I work with severe depression and anxiety. I work with what people call personality disorders, which we have a whole other way of working with. I work with, no, there's nothing, because you're open to all of life. You're open to all possibilities. And if you told me something, I'd say, great, let's fold it in. It's I use everything. I'm like a scavenger, so there's nothing, because it's not a particular, it just starts with life. I can't get bigger than that. It's not starting with, mindfulness or cognition or affect or behavior or anything. It's just, or systems. I mean, I was trained really as, postmodern systems therapist. So, I was trained as a narrative therapist, and I'm trained hypnotically. It's like, I'm non-denominational. I'll take anything. And I just fold it all into the framework. So I don't think there's anything I can't work with. I mean, but.
That is wonderful. That is wonderful. And it brings a lot of hope for many, many people, both, let's call them clients and therapists, because sometimes, people who are working with people, they come to I don't know what to do with this person. Like, he or she came to me for help, and I've done this and that and the other, and it didn't work. And, they kind of get to a point where they feel completely stuck with the methods that they have learned. And, this can be just another way of doing some effective work, which can totally help that person.
Well, what I'd say is, as long as your attention is on the client, it will work. Most reasons I'll tell you why therapists run into trouble in my experience.
Mm-hmm.
A, they don't listen literally. If you don't listen literally, you'll listen metaphorically. So if I say to you, for example, I feel way down, helpless, hopeless, and I can't move, right? If you think I'm metaphorically describing my depression, you're in trouble. If you know I'm in a narrative where I'm way down, I'm helpless, I'm hopeless, and I can't move, then you know that you're going to find a woman in the French Revolution who's being way down, helpless, hopeless, can't move, and a guillotine's coming down in her head. So the first thing I would say to therapists is always listen literally. The second thing I'd say is there's no such thing as resistance. So if someone says, I can't do it, they're just telling you a story. They're not resisting you. And it has nothing to do with you as a therapist, and they're not resisting anything. I don't think there is such a thing as resistance. I only think there's remembering. So whatever they say, I'm going to say yes. And I'm going to tell them to find a body sensation. And I'm going to say whatever comes to you. And if they say, I can't do this, I say, and because they're telling me a story that they're stuck in where they can't do something, except now they're witnessing it. So I would say, if you know that you can't step outside of the process, if you know that as soon as you as a therapist are bringing your attention to yourself saying, what have I done wrong or anything, unless they're inducting you into a story, it's a technical mistake, literally, because you can't do anything wrong if you just focus on who your real client is, know they're sharing their story, and know that everything is part of the process and everything is literal. And I'd say then you just hang out with it. What I tell people is there can be a lot of layers. I mean, I can't promise you it'll all get done in this lifetime. I just promise you at some point you stick with it long enough, it will all get done. But,
yeah.
I mean, look at Jesus. I mean, right before Jesus gets crucified, he's still screaming at his father. I mean, and he had theoretically, he was pretty evolved and he's still screaming. So it may take till after you're dead, but you just keep going. It's like layers and layers and layers. And I never assume that something isn't working. I just assume I don't understand it yet.
Yeah.
So
awesome. So, Andy, how can people get in touch with you? How can they connect with you? Where can they find you?
If they want to find our website, it's lifecenteredtherapy.com. If they want to find me, I answer my own emails if you send them to me and not to our website, which is our institute, which is Hahn, Ahahn at lifecenteredtherapy.com. I love, I'll respond to people. If they want to hear me, I have my own podcast. It's called Guided Self-Healing Fearless Living. They can get us there. If they want to train with us, if they want to learn all about our training without having to sign up, it's called go.readyforamiracle.net/free-training. So it's go.readyforamiracle.net/free-training. Then they can find out all about our trainings, and I tell you all about it you don't have to sign up for anything. And I tell a lot of what's here and some other things too. And that's the way to get in touch with me. And if you get in touch with me, I promise you I will get back in touch with you, except right now we're finishing editing a book, which hopefully we will have done by the end of Friday. And hopefully it will be coming out in February 22nd of 2022. And it's called The 1 Hour Miracle, which I will say is not our title, but it's just, we'll live with it, because sometimes when you have somebody else who's your agent and publisher, they say, we really like this title because we think it will sell books. And we say, yeah, but it's not. Sort of like, we're trying to change the whole conversation in the world of spiritual psychology. And they say, that's nice, but you'll sell enough books that maybe it will come from the ground up. And I said, well, okay. But it's
awesome. And I'm looking forward to, I'm looking forward for your book. And so everybody, what I suggest you do now, go ahead and check out Andy's website and connect with him on his website and social media, and go ahead and share in the Facebook group, share your insights from this presentation, share your key ideas, key points that you took from this presentation, and then take a quick break, and we'll see you in the next presentation or in the next day. So talk to you soon. Thank you, Andy, again.
Thank you, Eugen. It's a pleasure. Thank you for offering me this opportunity.